Hello and welcome to another episode of Anfield Watch. So there's been a lot of, I think, criticism and negativity around Ronald Araujo coming to Liverpool. I wanted to record this video to quash all that negative sentiment and to explain why I think Araujo can actually rediscover his form and become a great signing for Liverpool, and why this is actually a really smart deal for Liverpool. So let me begin by, taking you back to a couple of years. In 2023, 2024, around that era, Araujo was actually considered to be among one of the best centre-backs in the world. He was seen as potentially the successor to Virgil van Dijk's throne. And what happened in 2024 is Hansi Flick took over Barcelona, and Hansi Flick plays this very expansive, open, just very high forward-thinking football. That leaves the centre-backs very exposed. So what happened to Araujo is, I think a lot of the times when you're playing in that system, it's really important for that centre-back to be able to read the game very well, to have really high intelligence and high awareness. That's why Virgil van Dijk and Jurgen Klopp worked so well. Virgil van Dijk was perfect for that style of play because he has everything in terms of his reading of the game. Now, Araujo, I would say his strengths don't necessarily lie in his awareness, in his reading of the game. He has other really quality strengths, but that's not his style of play. And I think he suffered from Barcelona being so open and having to do a lot more work, a lot more thinking when he was playing as a centre-back. And that has led to, I think, on top of that, a catch-22 situation where he has lost a bit of confidence as well. And when you're losing confidence and you're playing in a system that doesn't suit you, it all just adds up. And I think a lot of the reason why Araujo has looked poor over the last couple of years, or not as good as he has been down to those factors. And I just wanted to demonstrate this as well. So this is a heat map from Araujo's final season before Flick in 2023-2024. You can see he's playing a lot deeper. He's covering a lot more areas. He's covering the channels a lot. And he's still playing in a high line, but he's covering more of those channel areas. And he's playing in a system that I think is more similar to Under Iraola's system, or even Arne Slot's system. He's playing the role that Ibrahima Konate would have played alongside Virgil van Dijk. Then you switch that to last season, playing under Flick, and you see he's playing a lot further forward. As his heat map would suggest, he's playing in a really high line, and he's not having to cover the channels as much, and instead he's having to, hold that line. And I don't think that's the style of play that his game suits. So what style of play does he actually suit? And I think, the way Araujo plays, one of his biggest strengths is the fact that he's a really good 1-versus-1 dueler. He is very strong in his duels, and he, uses his body really well. He's very good at using his speed as well. He's got the physical profile, I think, that's ready to play in the Premier League, and he's got the desire and the passion as well. He comes from Uruguay, and I think I mentioned this on my Twitter. I think he's very much a kind of like Darwin Núñez type of player. He's the Darwin Núñez of centre-backs, and I mean this in the best possible way, because when Araujo is at his best, he's unplayable as a centre-back. When he's full of confidence, when he's using his speed, when he's using his strengths to his best ability, similarly to Núñez when he was at his best, destroying Virgil van Dijk in the Champions League, or, we saw him at rare times doing it for Liverpool as well. He was unplayable. And I think that Araujo is the same. If he's got the confidence, if he's feeling it, he can be brilliant. And in his final season before Flick took over in 2023-2024, the stats kind of reflect this as well. So out of centre-backs, he had the third best defensive duel success rates in the whole of La Liga, won over 74% of his defensive duels, and he was pretty strong in his aerial duels as well. winning over 60% of his aerial duels. Now, looking at Scout Labs data from that season as well, you can see he ranks quite highly for active defending, possession adjusted active defending as well, in the 86th percentile. And you can see, I think, some of the really good numbers here is the amount of X threat he prevented during this season. Again, 86th percentile, really high. And, all of these factors, I think, is come down to Barcelona under Xavi playing a different kind of football, and that's being more suited to his skills. So a lot of the times in that season, he's having to defend the channels, he's having to make recovery runs, he's having to, he's in a more sort of deeper lying defense, and he doesn't have as much space in front of him that he has to defend. And I think that's when, he's in a tighter area, when he's playing alongside maybe a bit more of a mature partner in Virgil van Dijk. I think that's when you can really bring the best out of him. And I think that's when he was his best as well. He would say he was his best. But he's isolated in 1-versus-1 situations, using that aggression, having to defend his box, because I think he's a really good box defender as well. He can make a lot of clearances. He can use his body to be physical in the defensive line. And I think those are his strengths. And I think in the Premier League, where we're seeing a lot more physicality, a lot more directness, I think Araujo's going to suit that system a lot more compared to how Flick plays. Now, on top of that, I think as well, one of the key metrics, and I think one of the key areas why this makes sense for Liverpool, is because he's also really composed and comfortable on the ball. Ball carrying in particular, even when he's under pressure, he's really good at bringing the ball out from the back. Again, you only have to look at the stats. So you're looking at his Scout Lab from the 2023-24 season. He's in the 97th percentile for creating chances, being part of the build-up, carrying the ball forward. All of these things he's very good at. And again, when I'm looking at the stats from that year, he averaged the second most progressive runs per 90 out of centre-backs, 1.6. Those are like Matip-esque numbers. And then on top of that as well, he ranked quite highly for passes into the final third among centre-backs as well, within the top 10 centre-backs in that metric as well. And pass completion rate was quite high as well, over 75%. Now, I think when it comes to his passing, he definitely takes on a lot of risks. And I think sometimes that can look bad. And I think we've seen with Konate as well, he can make mistakes in that area of his game. But ultimately, Iraola wants his defenders to take risks. He wants his players to take risks on the ball. He said that himself. And I think that's why he fits into Iraola's system, his style, even when it comes to the build-up, because he is happy to take those risks. He is happy to make those ambitious passes forward. And he is a very forward-thinking player. So when you're looking at his progressive numbers, again, Scout Labs ranked him in the 91st percentile. Expected threat build-up, all of these things, fields gained, progressive passes and carries into the final third. He ranked really highly in those metrics. And just, I think, in terms of, being under pressure, he does well in those situations. Now, I think sometimes, like I said, he can give the ball away, but every centre-back can give the ball away. And the way Iraola wants his players to play is to take those risks, is to make those risky passes. And knowing how Liverpool encounter a lot of low blocks, how they're going to be coming up against a lot of teams who just sit back, I think Araujo's carrying ability, the way he can run forward, the way he will make a risky line breaking pass, I think it's kind of like above what Konate was able to offer. And a lot of the times when he is going to have to be on the ball, I think he's going to be a good option to have in that sense, even if he's just playing as a right back, because that's another bonus. He can play as a right back. He can operate on that right side. He has done so under Flick. And then again, I think that's when his qualities come to the fore a little bit more, because he has to take on 1-versus-1 duels a lot more. like, coming up against Vinny Jr., I think it was in that 23-24 season when he had an incredible game against Vinny Jr., who's one of the best, 1-versus-1 forwards, and he did really well in those situations. So I think that's why we might see actually Araujo play as a right back a lot more often. And then in Iraola's system, we know Iraola likes an overlapping fullback. He likes a fullback who runs it in behind the opposition's lines. So you can have Kerkez doing that, Liverpool forming a sort of back three, what we wanted to see under Arne Slot as well after Milos was signed. And you can have Milos, Kerkez just running in behind defences, Araujo maybe being a bit more defensive minded, holding Liverpool, giving Liverpool that defensive solidity, playing alongside Jackie and Van Dijk and making sure there is not necessarily, Liverpool are not as vulnerable when it comes to a quick counter-attack against them in those transitional phases when they switch to defending again. And I think that could give Liverpool a lot of balance. And I think this is why ultimately Araujo is a good signing. He's someone who is very, I think, Iraola coded. He's got the ability to be comfortable on the ball. He can make progressive runs. He can carry the ball forward. He can make passes. He can take risks on the ball. And 1-versus-1, he's comfortable playing that system. Now, defensively, Iraola will operate a high line, but it's not going to be as open as Flick's system. And like I mentioned, Van Dijk playing alongside him, I think is going to help a lot, because Van Dijk's awareness is going to make up for Araujo's lack of reading of the game. I think Araujo is going to be, even if he's playing as a centre-back, he's going to be reduced to having to make those recovery runs and defending the channels and taking 1-versus-1 situations, which he is actually really good at, which I think, he's actually probably elite at doing, or, that's why people were talking about him as one of the best defenders, centre-backs a couple of years ago, before he lost that confidence. And ultimately as well, I think when it comes to the confidence, we've seen with Iraola how he can bring the best out of centre-backs as well. Zabani, Dean Huijsen, Marcus Senesi, all of these players thrived under him. And I think in Iraola's system, it does accommodate centre-backs really well. And I think we will see a more confident, a more assured Araujo just as a result of that. Whereas I think Flick asks a lot from his centre-backs in that regard. So ultimately, I do think this is a good move for Liverpool. Look, he's got experience. We wanted to get experience in. I think that was important for Liverpool to bring experience in. He can play as a centre-back. He can play as a right-back. But ultimately, this is a loan move. Liverpool have no obligation to buy. If this doesn't work out, if the gamble that they're hoping will happen and, Araujo is able to be the 2023, 2024 version, does not happen, Liverpool can just say in 12 months' time, it's okay, you can go back to Barcelona and continue your career. We already have Jackie. Hopefully Giovanni Leone will be, up to the pace and rhythm of the Premier League, and he won't have any injury issues. Conor Bradley hopefully will be back fully fit and in his prime. And on top of that, you have, if any, Ndukwe coming back, Mortala Ndiaye potentially with a year of experience training with Liverpool and maybe making a couple of appearances. And Ndukwe should have his work permit as well. And all of those factors, the fact that Liverpool also have a sort of contract agreement already with Jarrell Kwanzaa and a buyback clause that they can activate next summer too. I think all of these factors kind of facilitate this being a stopgap option, and a really good stopgap option because of the experience that he has. Ultimately as well, I think one of the biggest factors is probably just something that maybe nobody has mentioned, but Liverpool, this is a bit more of a short-term thinking, but ultimately Liverpool playing Newcastle in the first game of the season. Jackie has, up until this point, not played a single minute for Liverpool. Liverpool can't even use Ndukwe. He's played most of the pre-season minutes. Liverpool might have had to play Wataru Endo in that Newcastle game. Now, Araujo comes in And guess what? Araujo played 3 times against Newcastle last season for Barcelona. He played once in the league phase, and then he was involved in that Champions League knockout round against Newcastle as well. So he's got the experience of playing Liverpool's opening opponent in the Premier League. And I think that will also bode really well, because he played actually as a right back in that game and as a centre back in those games as well against Newcastle. And ultimately, he did play a lot of English opponents in the Champions League last season. Some of them weren't as successful. The game against Chelsea, I think everyone's going to highlight because of his reckless challenge, and that received a red card on Cucurella. But ultimately, I think he does have experience coming up against English opponents, recent ones as well. And the factor that he's played Newcastle 3 times, I think that's going to bode really well for Liverpool too, going into the season and going into, just long term as well, having that experience of playing high level English teams regularly. I don't think Liverpool would have been able to find another player like that. As I mentioned, I really like Ismailou Ghanou, Josh Ashampong, and other sort of right-back options. Gila Doué has been mentioned a lot as well. But none of these players have the experience. And with Liverpool having such a lack of experience, apart from Van Dijk, in the back line, Araujo, I think, makes a lot more sense. But let me know what you think. How was your response to Araujo's signing? Do you think he is someone who is a right move for Liverpool, or are you disappointed by Liverpool making this move? Let me know what you think. I definitely have high hopes for him, but I know a lot of Liverpool fans feel negative about this. Personally, I think, I always like to back a player, and I think with Araujo, because of the fact that he's such a player based on emotion and confidence, and I think I would like Anfield and the Liverpool fans to get behind him, maybe a lot more than other new signings, even more than that, because I think he just reminds me of Nunez in so many ways, and the way that he plays. And I think if he does have that confidence, and if he does feel like he's, he belongs and he has the backing of the fans, he will give you 110%. He will put his heart and soul into the game, his body on the line, and you get an incredible player who's unplayable and who attackers will hate coming up against. But obviously that's a big if, because we haven't seen that at Barcelona over the last couple of years. However, in a new environment, I really hope Anfield do get behind him. But yeah, let me know what you think. And as always, if you made it this far, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, because it helps us out massively. I really thank everyone who subscribed over the last few months. We had a big drive to get to 10,000 subscribers. Now the mission starts to get to 20,000 subscribers. So if you can help us out, and if you can help me out as well, I'd appreciate it a lot. So thank you very much.